Hammond. I'm going to moderate tonight. I hope you all enjoyed Lady Bird. Yes. Thanks for coming out on Super Bowl Sunday.
What?
Oh, yes, you know that. Yeah, Philadelphia one. Listen, guys,
Really?
First off, I want to introduce you to an extraordinary costume designer. She is nominated for the Costume Designers Guild for Best Contemporary Costumes for the movie you just saw, Lady Bird, and so many great movies. Please welcome April Napier. And the director and the writer here. Please welcome Greta Gerwig. And as if you need to know, Greta is nominated for the Best Director and the Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars. Back last night at the DGA. We could go on and on with everything that's happened. Can you believe that all of this came from this for you?
No. It's actually every time we go to, why don't you get closer? You're so far away.
We are.
No, every time we've gone to one of these things, it's been so amazing, and it's so amazing to, be in a room full of people that you admire, who've made work that you think is great, and we were at the Producers Guild Awards, and we were all at the Golden Globes, and then last night we were at the DGA, and every time we all look at each other and we're like, can you believe it? And not because we put everything we had into it, and it was such a labor of love from every single person who worked on the movie, but it was it's a tier 1 movie. It's not it wasn't a thing that we thought like in a year and a half we'll all be
Crazy.
Yeah.
Academy Award nomination.
Yeah.
Right.
But it comes out when you're writing this and things. This comes out of your heart. This comes out of your personal life to a degree, and because obviously you grew up in Sacramento, and some of this it's not your story,
Right.
but it is you, and you put everything into this. Can you talk about why you wanted to make this movie and why you think it's resonated so much with audiences?
Well, I wanted to make this movie because in a way, when I start writing, I don't have it all mapped out. I don't know where it's all going to end. I tend to overwrite. I wrote a really long version of the screenplay, and that's my process because it's kind of how I get to know my characters and let them talk to me and talk to each other and tell me what they're up to. And I think I had a sense of wanting to set something in Sacramento because it's where I'm from and I love it, and I had a sense of wanting to make a story where a mother and a daughter, that it's that's the core emotional relationship, and that's where I started from, and then these characters sort of grew into being, and they're certainly like connected to my life, but they're also like, I wasn't like Lady Bird. Like, I never made anyone call me by a different name. I never dyed my hair bright red. I was much more of like a rule follower, people pleaser kind of kid. And so I think in a way writing the character of Lady Bird was like a way that I could explore some things that I was not able to occupy as a person.
But what you did put in, I think I know this, your favorite musical, Merrily We Roll Along.
Yes.
Stephen Sondheim's rare flop, which shouldn't have been because it was a great, great show. And last night I noticed I was at the WGA and they played you on with music from that.
I know, it was my most exciting moment. They were playing the overture to Merrily, and I was like, and I commented on it when I was on stage, and I felt like it was crickets. And people were like, I don't know what you're talking about. It was like, Merrily We Roll Along, the greatest American musical. Yeah, it definitely, I put in tons of things that I love because I think that's sort of my primary motivation, is sort of trying to capture and distill things that I love or have moved me, and making them exist in their own world. But I think there's lots of reasons to make movies and lots of reasons to make art. But for me, it comes from a sense of like, this is what I've loved.
Ultimately, too, this is a wonderful mother-daughter story too that you don't see on the screen that much. You really don't. And so that's coming from a place that you probably saw a void there.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great mother-daughter movies. You know, Terms of Endearment.
Terms of Endearment would be the number one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's that, and I love that movie so much. And there's the Mike Leigh film, Secrets and Lies, is a great mother-daughter. I mean, there are great mother-daughter films, but I mean, I think I met when I was writing it, early in writing it, I was sort of, I had versions of it where I was like, is it an adult with her mother, or do I want to do 3 generations of women, or is she younger? I had all these different versions, and then I was like, no, the most vivid moment is when it's kind of a version of it is ending. I think I'm always interested in worlds that are coming to an end, that are kind of blazing out. Yeah. And so much of like the end of high school, it's like these social relationships that mean so much to you at the time are suddenly going to become just utterly ridiculous very soon. Like they cease to exist, any of those hierarchies. And the same is true in a way of like your relationship with your parents. It's going to still be parent to child, but it's shifting, and it's in that kind of shifting that it becomes almost more intense. And it felt like, well, that was the time that it's most beautiful and most difficult.
Yeah. You know, this is your first solo directing. You did a little movie before, Mumblecore, with somebody, but this was the one that, you know, after writing a couple of screenplays, you decided, I have to direct this? Or
Yeah, I'd been wanting to direct for a really long time, but I felt like I had to gather enough experience, because I didn't go to film school, I did it on film sets, both as an actor and a writer, and then early it was a lot of DIY kind of stuff where it was all hands on deck. And when I finished this screenplay, I just kind of had this moment with myself where I think that the fear of not doing it becomes bigger than the fear of failure, and then you think, all right, well, it's time. And then what was so wonderful about how it all ended up working out, not that there weren't difficulties, and definitely filmmaking is full of difficulties, but like there were all these signs along the way that it was going, that gave me confidence. I'm a slightly mystical person, so but like when I met April, we showed up, we were gonna meet, I'd gotten her through Mike Mills, who I'd worked with and she'd worked with, and
in 20th Century Women, right?
Yeah, and even though she wasn't the costumer on 20th Century Women, like he was like, oh, she's great, and then we met, and when we met, we were both wearing the same outfit.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yep, and we both had backpacks on.
Okay.
Both wearing like white men's button-down shirts, high-waisted black jeans, black Oxfords, and we both had black backpacks.
April, how did that happen?
And April
Hi.
just looked at me and said, we found each other. And I was like, we did.
She had the job right there.
I know.
Probably.
No, I mean, I knew right away, and then we just started talking, and it was just, it's like that. I mean, my favorite thing about filmmaking is like what a collaborative art form it is, and it's like you're meeting your family for the first time, your artistic family that you didn't know was out there, and it's and you just find that you're speaking the same language. Like it's so not confusing.
You're creating a family too, because this is your first film, really, and you bring in all these people, and I'll bet you work with them again.
I hope so. I mean, you better. No, I mean, I have I brought some family from before, like my cinematographer, Sam Levy, is someone I'd worked with on Frances Ha and Mistress America as a writer and as an actor, and I loved his photography. I loved his person. He's a person you want to be with for 14 hours a day. And we were friends, and we lived in New York, so we could work on getting together, talking about the movie, shot listing, just developing what we hoped the look of the movie would be for about a year before we started actually prepping.
Wow. Now, April, I have to ask you, in terms of working with Greta on this and developing the costumes. This is you're nominated in the contemporary costume category for the costume designers. They have 3 different categories: fantasy, contemporary, and I don't know, something else. But I don't know. But this is very unique. The kind of wardrobe that you prepared here, because it's set right after 9/11, and I'm wondering how that informed you and Sacramento, that place in that time, in creating the clothes here of what they would wear.
Well, Greta always had said that it's set in Sacramento and it's 2002, but Sacramento is always a little bit behind. It's the Midwest of California.
Even though it's in California.
It's in the Central Valley. So it's not Los Angeles and it's not San Francisco. It's always, so you're pulling on a little bit of late 90s in that kind of reference to sort of select things. And then Greta actually gave me a huge box of photographs that she had from her high school. So you get to look at these things that are the authentic version of what's happening. It's not in a magazine, it's not in a film, it's not something that's being presented. I'm looking at actually what was happening. And so you can see, like for a ground, for the base of setting the texture of what's happening, where Lady Bird is going to be existing, I can see the real thing. And then you also spoke about the uniforms. Like the only way you can identify yourself when you're given a uniform in a private school is the way that you wear it, and then the things that you.
Well, they all have these polo shirts, but they all wear them slightly differently to give them an identification, I think.
And the things that the shoes that you choose and the elements that you choose to go with them and the way that you wear them. Yeah. That's how you find your identity.
How did you work with the actors too? Did they inform it when you talked to the actors? Did you talk to the actors in developing their individual looks?
For sure.
Yeah.
That was actually like early. I felt like I had April and Beanie. I kind of introduced them and I wanted them to hang out. I as much as possible, like as an actor, I feel like building what you wear is such a huge part of a character, and I felt like I kind of wanted them to work with you outside of my watching over it. Just because you need to pass the torch to the actors, and I felt like it was like you and Beanie came up with stuff that I didn't know until you showed, and I would approve it, but I didn't know it until you said like.
But we also met together too. Remember that
did,
we went to Broom Street and we were having coffee and Beanie was there, and I think that's where the idea of Skechers came out. The tragic Sketcher story. I mean, because things that people identify themselves from the root up, right?
Yeah.
So like the shoes that you're choosing, the shoes that they're grounding you, and they're the things that are identifying you for how you move.
I've talked to so many actors where they say they finally get the character when they put that costume on.
Yeah.
You feel that?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no question. And also, like, the way April works, it's like, it's so detailed, but I mean, that is how people build their lives, is out of details. Like, what clips do you wear in your hair? Or what necklaces do you wear? What's like, there was one thing you and Beanie developed, or Beanie had decided, and you, like, there was a necklace that she wore that she never talks about that her dad gave her before he, like, left the family. And, like, she knew it, and it was hers, and she always had it on, and it wasn't a big deal made of it, but it was like this little tiny thing. And I think like those things it's very important to me. Like, movies are limited real estate, so I think everything that's in the frame should have meaning. There's a Robert Altman quote, like, about when he had such big cast, but he said, if someone is in the frame, they're the star of the movie. There are no background actors. Like, if I can see them, they're the star. So everything needs to be just right.
Perfect. And there's so many in the world of the internet now and everything. Everybody's uber looking at everything you do in a movie. It's crazy. I got to talk to you before I throw it open to some questions about your cast. You put together the most perfect cast here. And look at the people that you have in this. Beanie, who you keep referring to, has just been on Broadway with Bette Midler and Hello Dolly, and Timothy Chalamet. We know what he's doing. and extraordinary. Saoirse Ronan playing a Sacramento teenager, pulling it off flawlessly, and then the great Laurie Metcalf, who's just extraordinary in this movie too, and doesn't do a whole lot of movies, a lot of theater, and of course Roseanne and different things. So, how did you?
Yeah. Oh, and Laurie, it makes me so happy to be able to say Oscar-nominated Laurie Metcalf. It's been too long in coming. I mean, she's a national treasure, and she has. I mean, for me, I grew up as like a theater kid, and so like the lore of what she and John Malkovich and Gary Sinise and with Steppenwolf, what they created there, and what they did for American theater, and how, you know, Chicago was such a flashpoint for writers and actors and, you know, new theater directors. Like that was a big thing. And also for me, like then I got Tracy Letts too.
I was going to mention him too.
Yeah, and they've known each other for 30 years, but they've never actually acted together. But it was, I mean, the cast was and Lucas Hedges.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, from
go on and on.
Yeah, I mean it's a really. I mean, it felt very special while we were doing it, and I have to say, all the actors loved each other. And Stephen McKinley Henderson, who plays Father Leviat, she's so extraordinary.
And you know,
Lois, yeah,
amazing.
Right.
Lois Smith, who's, you know, played her first film was opposite James Dean.
East of
Eden. I mean, she's the real deal. No, I mean, it was also just like lovely because it was lots of different generations of actors. So there was also like Stephen McKinley Henderson, who plays the priest, who is, you know, who's the drama teacher. I've seen him on Broadway. He's like one of the foremost interpreters of August Wilson, and he was in Fences last year. And he's a truly great actor, and I was so honored that he came to do this part. And what is amazing is he occasionally teaches a class at Juilliard, so he teaches actually like acting classes. And I had him do theater games with all the, you know, Lucas and Beanie and Saoirse, and all of the kids who were in that, they just like, he became their beacon. He like was the person who was, you know, because he's so incredibly magnetic, and it just felt like a lot of like really just excellent actors who were also in a place of safety, and they felt like they could play, and it was just I mean that's also letting actors take over is amazing.
And considering this is Super Bowl Sunday, we have to mention the wonderful actor who played the substitute drama
Bob
teacher.
Stevenson.
Yeah. He was amazing, doing all the scenes out like
I know.
You kept him an extra day. You're like, wait, Bob can't leave.
I know. I was like, Bob, can we get Bob back? Like, can we? He's amazing. Yeah.
How did you come up with that idea?
Well, I'd see he's always great. Whenever you see him in anything, you're like, oh, thank God he's here. This is gonna be a good scene. I mean, he's done so many. He's a true like character actor, and I asked one of my casting directors, Allison Jones, here in LA. I was like, can we see, is he around? Like, would he do this? And she said, okay. And then he said yes, and he came and he showed up and he did it, and it was just. I mean, I had a lot of actors like that. I mean. Catherine Newton, who plays Darlene, who tells them to not eat the wafers. She's a great actress. She's in like Big Little Lies. She's in 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and she came in and auditioned for a different part, and it wasn't like a right fit. And it was like, and I called her and I said, this is not a big enough part for you, but do you want to come just be around and play? And she said, yeah, completely. And she showed up and she created this whole character with that braid. And
I mean, I think that's the whole thing, though, when Greta writes this thing that is like so true and so authentic, and who doesn't want to be a part of that?
Right.
Like, it's someone like telling the truth. You know, I feel like we're in a place right now in society that's hungry for intimate stories that are telling the truth and showing all the flaws. And it's been a rough couple of years, and I feel like I keep telling you, like, it's like changing the narrative of cinema. Like, there's a craving for people to see small, intimate stories that everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
You know, it's these films that are giant and huge are extraordinary, but there's also like people want to touch that thing that's real. And so when you write a real story that's showing all the foibles and all the flaws and all the struggles and mistakes and the honesty and the joy, that's what people.
And being funny at the same time and entertaining, which is, you know, it's not an easy thing to do. And hitting that tone, it's tough. Now let's see if you guys have any questions. If you do, just raise your hand. And yeah, right here.
Well, I'm gonna fall all over you for a minute. I'm from Granite Bay.
No.
I'm-
Oh my god.
I'm friends. I've auditioned for Connor for New Felicia.
Oh my
Connor's
god.
her best friend.
Yeah, my best friend.
And Eric Daniels, I've also auditioned for him. He's fantastic. He was a piano player in the film. And I went to go see this film with my parents in Sacramento in December. And I said, I'm like, this is my life. Oh, by the way, I didn't get into DePaul University, and I wound up going to Davis. So I got into your backup school, and I actually did go to UC Davis. You were lucky that you got into Barnard.
Oh,
you know?
yes. Well, but my sister went to Berkeley. My brother went to Davis. My dad went to Berkeley. My mom went to Davis. I mean, we're all
You're all there.
UCs
Yeah.
in the northern part of the state.
I had a great time at Davis. I don't want to bag on Davis, but there's two things. I want to say one thing, and then I want to ask you a couple questions. But I saw this film with my parents, and I said, this is my childhood. And they're like, they looked at me like I had two heads. They're like, this was not your childhood. And I was like, but it was. And I mean, for me, I don't know if that's because as parents, like, they don't understand what a child is, what it's like going through a child, like, specifically in Sacramento. But of course, I'm from Granite Bay, which is a totally different thing, but a lot of friends in Sacramento. Two things. Are you going to continue down this directing path, or are you going to go back to acting more? Secondly, why do you think there are not more films about Sacramento?
Okay, we're going to take that second question first, because I've seen about 4 films this year that are set in
Yeah,
Sacramento.
I know.
It's a hot new location. right?
Brad Status.
Yeah.
What are your other?
There's a couple of others.
Okay,
I've
the
seen.
Ken Burns has a big section in his documentary about. I mean, it's not the same thing exactly, but about Vietnam. He does a whole section in Sacramento.
No, there's others actually.
Um,
So Sacramento is a hot new location here, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love Sacramento, and I'm so glad Connor and Eric Daniels. I mean, Eric Daniels came and like worked on it was a real family affair.
Sure.
So great, Connor.
But
All right, and he also wants to know whether you want to go down this directing path.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm gonna keep directing. I mean, I love acting, and I'll keep acting the way I've been lucky enough to be able to act, which is that I've gotten to work with directors I really admire, and I suppose as an actor, I've never asked how big is the part. I'm just like, do I think you're an artist, and are you interesting, and I'd love to come make something with you. And that's been a very privileged thing. It hasn't always been the case, you know. Sometimes you just need to get the health insurance. I mean, you know,
Which is an important thing.
It's a noble thing. But yeah, directing is definitely the thing I want to do. But I do think Sacramento, I do have to just say, like, it is. I want to make more films that take place in Sacramento too. I have sort of an idea for a couple others, but I think it's it is such an amazing city because I think it has so many different points of you know, like the story of California, the story of America, of, you know, I mean, it is, I think in 2002, it's like one of the most diverse cities in the United States, which people don't associate with it, but it is actually true. It has so many interesting stories and interesting things that I think it's a very rich place to explore for a storyteller, and I hope I get to do it more.
Yeah, until this year, I always thought of Sacramento as just politics.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so not. I mean, in the movies that we're seeing, and particularly yours and Brad's Status too, it's not that at all.
No. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, given there's there's a lot of people who work for the state, but it's not just politics. But it is, as Sacramentans, we're always sensitive to.
You nailed it. Like, you nailed Sacramento like times 10.
I mean, even like details like the love for Ronald Reagan, which is very real in Sacramento.
Really?
But it has to do with the fact that when he was governor of California, he lived in Sacramento, and people still talk about that.
Yeah.
And they don't like it when governors fly in, and they want you to live there. And so every house we scouted, there somewhere in the house was a picture of Ronald Reagan. And I remember the production designer said, "I thought you just wrote that as a joke." And I was like, "Nope." Or they thought when we were scouting, they were like, "Did you come in and hang up the posters of Ronald Reagan?" I was like, "No, this is."
That's really funny.
They love Ronald Reagan.
Because I remember when Jerry Brown was elected, he said, "I'm not going to live in the mansion there," and all of that stuff. And Ronald Reagan did.
He didn't live in that mansion. He had another house. They walked past it in the movie, actually. They walked past the Reagan house in the movie.
Interesting. Wow. Yes, right here.
As my only daughter chose Davis over the New York schools.
Good for her. Good for her.
Thrilled with it. No, you mentioned how when you originally wrote it, it was very, very long. What is the process that you go through to excise some of your own work?
When you write a script, what do you do to censor yourself or excise the work? She wants to know.
It's not it's not a linear process. I think I write a lot of material, again, like I was saying, to sort of get to know my people, my characters, see what they're going through, and I think it takes me a long time because I have to get it all out, then I have to sort of let it sink in, and then I often physically put the entire thing out in front of me, almost like a quilt, to look at all of the scenes and all of the characters. And you'll start seeing patterns, or I'll start seeing patterns of like, I'll realize I've written the same scene like 5 times, or like I'm saying the same beat. And it's like, okay, what's the most effective way to do this? And you winnow it down, or you realize 2 characters that you've split actually just need to be one person, or something like that process. And then it's just like kind of distilling it for maximum impact. And I think for me, it's almost like I need to build all of this and then crush it down to diamond size. Is that how diamonds are made? I have no idea.
Okay, yes, right there.
I want to know, wearing Brazil have Ladybird being when she was a child?
What? Sorry?
Wearing Brazil have Ladybird being when she was a child?
What would I have Ladybird being when she was?
Where Brazil was Brazil when she was
Oh, where?
Yeah, I
Oh,
couldn't
in
hear
Brazil. You know, I actually, Saoirse asked me that, and that was one of the things that I was like, I was like, do you want me to give you an answer, or do you want to invent it? And she said, oh, I'll invent it. Because I think it's kind of like good sometimes to have actors have secrets from you. Like, because then you get to be in a position of observation, not in a position of, you know everything, like you're being allowed to watch them. So that was one of the ones that she made up for herself. I have never actually been to Brazil, so I would love to go.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Given the similar structure of this and the Mike Mills movie that you did, do you find that was maybe a little bit of a stepping stone where you were able to figure out details and fine-tuning this?
You know, with the Mike Mills movie, I had already written this when I made his movie, and so I was actually filming his movie when I cast Saoirse. I remember because I had bright red hair, and I had a weekend break, and I went to Toronto Film Festival, and she was there too, and then we met up, and I cast her instantly. I mean, it was like one of those instant things. I just knew, and then we had to wait a year before we shot it. I don't know. I mean, I think it was one of those cases of like, I had already written this and was gonna make it, and then Mike came along, and I love his movies, and said, do you want to do this? And the thing that struck me about it was the specificity of another California that he was telling, because he was telling the story of like 1970s Santa Barbara, and how it's not LA, and it's something different, and it was so specific, and it was so specific to this time and this place, and we spent a lot of time talking about that idea of that other California, and so it was not so much a stepping stone as it was like a very lucky synchronicity of it happening all together, and also just working with him. I mean, you've worked with him. He's one of the most inspiring people to work with, because he's incredibly loving, incredibly honest, incredibly clear. He's very pure, and he's very emotionally connected as a director, and I think watching him direct out of that space allowed me to occupy more of that than maybe I would have without working with him.
And there's that sense of reality, whether it's beginners or 20th century women, that authenticity, I think, is the word that you feel when you see his pictures. Yeah, that he's lived it. Yeah, right there.
How does it feel like to be nominated? And did you ever thought about this while making the movie, or was it a total surprise?
Total surprise. It was it's amazing. It's still amazing. I'm still completely shocked by it. So we had no idea, and I mean, it's just this whole process of like bringing the movie out into the world, and then also just being embraced by people who are the people you've looked up to and your peers. It's extraordinary.
Amazing. Yes. Hi.
Hi. Is there a specific thing that happened with the priest from the psychiatric hospital?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I the thing that I sort of wanted to indicate was that he suffers from episodes of depression, deep depression, that are somewhat debilitating, and that it had happened before, and this was happening again. I felt like I wanted to give the edge of it, but I didn't want to nail it down too much. I think I was interested in sort of this moment where he's clearly in a lot of pain, and Marion is able to be with him in that pain, as this very like human moment between them. And I felt like anytime I tried to write into diagnosis or anything more literal, it felt like it lost its potency, which was this human interaction around it. But yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious to know, first of all, this movie's so good.
Thank you.
My second time seeing it, it affected me both times so much. I'm curious to know how you tapped into the emotion for the parent and the child, going through that process, and also how you acted such an authentic rapport with each other in that, what I agree with you, is such a pivotal moment in both people's lives.
Oh, that's so lovely that you brought your son. That's so nice. Good luck on college applications and everything. Don't worry, it'll be great wherever you go. It's so many ways to get where you're going. Yeah, I mean, I'm 34, and I'm certainly not. I'm not a parent, but I'm a step parent, and also as you get older, I think honestly one of the things that you go through is just like pretty much every day I'm like, oh, my mom was right. Oh, she was right about that. Yes, she's right about this, and then like, you just do this constant reconsidering of so many things. And I think acting is I love acting and I love actors, because I think it is such an empathetic art. I mean, so is all of storytelling. Whether, with April, it's like she has to think her way into every single character and emotionally be there with every single character, because she has to know how they like adorn themselves to go outside. And you know, lighting is storytelling, and cinematography is storytelling. And for me, because I've acted, this ability to walk in other people's shoes, and I felt like if you have any goals as an artist, it's that your empathy muscle gets stronger, or that you hope it does, that you're able to put yourself in more places. And I felt like I'd started to be able to crack something that was not my experience, but one that I could start to understand. And I don't want to say, oh, I know everything about it, because I certainly don't. But I think I was able to channel some part of myself, and some part of understanding. And yeah, and the actors, just with Saoirse and Laurie in particular, just they're just both such tremendously gifted actresses, and so powerful, and they could really, the thing that was amazing about them is they could really take each other, and you kind of have, as like an audience member, I think, because they're both so strong, you're not really worried that they're going to break each other. You know that they are punching the same weight class, and it's a battle royale, but it's also safe on some ways. Like they have, and they also, I think another thing that they did, they got along splendidly as people, and I always wanted that, because I feel like underneath all of this, it's like this is a moment in these people's lives that they're not going to be this way forever. They weren't this way before. This is moment of battling, but there's a base of like real love and understanding between them. And truly, it's that thing where they're flip sides of the same coin. They fight so much because they're so similar. And one of my favorite things about them as a director is they're pretty much the exact same height, and we gave them the exact same sort of little bob haircuts, so that when they're in profile or blown out a little bit, they just look like the same. And the first shots of them on the bed and sitting on the bed, it's I was just trying to visually draw that, because it's like you only fight with people who really really know how to do it with you. They're the same as you.
And I would mention too, we have to go, but I mean, I would mention too, in terms of that now instantly classic opening car scene, but more than that, the scene in the store where they're buying clothes, where she's trying out stuff, that has so much to do with what you did, April, too, and in terms of the kind of clothes they're buying. It's like stuff that looks like somebody might have worn before. You just talk a little bit about that, because I thought that scene was so important between the two of them.
That scene is so extraordinary because of the dialogue, right? That they're at each other. They're being Lady Bird's being agitated by her mother. She sees something different happening, and then it turns on a dime, right? Because underneath all of that fraught thing, there's always love. Even if we're doing it the wrong way, there's still that unconditional support.
But it's about clothes on the surface of it too. Yeah.
Right, because they're looking for the Thanksgiving dress to go to Dana's house. Right, and how it does turn like that when they're like, it's perfect, you know.
And that's what starts it, right?
Right, but also, what about that scene when she's in the prom dress later on, and then she's like, well, what if this is the best version of me? And it's like, you just know that. Everyone knows that. It's such a universal.
That prom dress though is like I just remember when you found it. It was like not a. It was not a. I mean, we looked at a few different options, but like we knew we wanted pink.
And was that like an Annie Potts? Did we have some kind of thing
Annie
that we
Potts
were
reference.
thinking about in that specific particular instance?
Yeah, it was kind of like it's such a like one of those nesting dolls version of, it's like in the John Hughes movies in the 80s, they were doing this throwback to the 50s. So now in 2017, I'm going to do a throwback to that, but it takes place in...
But it's also like a thing that's also, there was like a period in punk rock that you wore that kind of outfit, and then you made it more empowered somehow too. So it kind of incorporates all those elements of it.
So many of April's costumes too were like Proustian Madelines for me. Like she would come up with something, and we'd talk about it, but then she would come up with the exact object that I didn't even know I wanted. There's this one Gap sweater from the late 90s with the stripes that every single girl had. It's the stripes, and there's a hat, and there's also a scarf. And when she brought it out, and she said, "This sweater," I think almost started crying. I was like, "How did you know that sweater?" But there were so many like details like that, and those dresses. It was like I wanted something that felt like accessible, but also kind of cinematic and like great, and this feeling of yes, she's so many things, but like let's let her look great.
Yeah. Well, you did.
Yeah.
So congratulations, both of you, and everything that's happening with Lady Bird. Let's thank them. Thanks.